So the third step is to take this piece and use the planer to flatten the second face and make sure that it is parallel to the first face. You might ask why we can't just run this face along the jointer and create another flat face just like we did before. The reason why we use the planer instead is that the jointer just makes a flat face. There's no guarantee that that flat face is parallel to this flat face. They might be slightly off. So instead, we use the planer, which uses the flat reference face that we just created as on the bottom, and the cutter head, which is now located above the piece, is going to take off a layer of wood parallel to that first face. So the planer really only has two adjustments. It has this cutter head, which moves up and down using this crank, and it has a speed adjustment which goes from fast to slow. You might want to use the fast setting when you're trying to remove a lot of material, and the slow setting when you want to get a nice smooth finish cut. This speed setting can only be adjusted while the machine is running, but it's just a flip of this knob. So what we're going to do is set this planer height to the height of our material. The planer has a cutter head in it that looks exactly like the cutter head from the jointer, but this time it's upside down. So you imagine that cutter head is rotating towards the infeed table, which is facing me. So again, we're going to have the same rules of grain direction apply. We want to make sure that we are cutting with the grain instead of against it. So I'm going to be feeding this material in with the grain going uphill this time. So I want to check my piece and I want to measure and find the widest part of it. You'll see that it's quite thin on one side, it's thicker on one side. We want to make sure that when we start the planer, we're not removing too much material all at once. So I'm going to find the widest point, which is just over an inch here, exactly an inch. That's just under an inch. Now we're down to 7/8. So I'm going to set the start just over an inch. We want to be just barely skimming it at first. So you can use this gauge here to lower the cutter head so that it's just about an inch. And another way to check is that you can slide your piece in, and there'll be another gauge here that will just tell you how much material you're taking off. So right now I would be taking off about a 32nd of an inch. If I were to raise this up, I'd be taking off nothing. If I were to lower it down, I'd be taking off close to an 1/8 of an inch. So we'll start off on the lightest setting possible. And you want to feed this through in multiple passes. The machine has 2 rubber rollers inside on either side of the cutter head that are going to grab that piece and guide it through the planer in a controlled fashion. So we want to make sure that we don't have our hands underneath the piece or around the piece and that we're letting the machine do all the work for us. You also don't want to feed any piece of wood through this machine that is shorter than the distance between those 2 rollers. So these 2 metal rollers on top are approximately the same distance as those rubber rollers on the bottom. So you can use this as a guide. If your wood doesn't fit on steadily on both of those rollers, it's too short and you can't use the planer. So as we're approaching our final thickness, I'm going to be checking the actual thickness using a ruler rather than relying on this gauge if I want to get super accurate results. And each time I use the planer, I'm going to turn, or each time I adjust the planer, I'm going to make about a 1/2 to 1 full turn of this crank. Any more than that and we would be taking off too much material. If I want to really fine tune it, I can be making quarter turns or even eighth turns as I approach that final desired thickness. If you're planing really thick material and taking off a lot, once you've reached a smooth face, it's okay to flip the piece over multiple times. This can also be useful if you want to clean up some of those marks left over by the jointer. You just want to make sure that you have a perfectly flat face first and that you've removed all the rough spots before you flip it over. And in order to maintain that grain direction, instead of flipping it side to side like this, which would cause the grain direction to reverse, we're going to flip it end to end like this. The reason that we like to remove material from both sides for thicker pieces is that wood tends to have more moisture in the middle of the piece and it'd be drier on the outside. So if we're taking off a lot of material from one face only, we're going to be exposing some of the wetter parts of the wood and leaving one side dry, and that can cause your finished piece to warp a little bit. So if our goal is to have perfectly flat, straight pieces, that can be working against us. Now that we have 3 smooth surfaced faces, we can do the fourth and final step on the table saw.